So welcome to the Global Discussions with creatives, leaders and thinkers. Today, delighted to be joined by Judie Russell. Judie, you're very welcome to the podcast. Let's begin by asking you to introduce yourself to our international audience. Tell us a little bit about your journey, your background, and what you focused on today. So over to you, Judie.
Great. Thanks a million, Simon. So my name is Judie Russell. I am from Cork in Ireland, the part that keeps Ireland floating. And I have been working in video in various shapes and forms for about 15 years. And I totally stumbled into it. Now, when I was younger, we had a camcorder at home in our house and I was obsessed with it. And I still can't get over the fact that you can get a machine to replicate a moment in time and play it back. I think we take that so much for granted, and I still think it's just fascinating. And when I was younger, we could, we'd record onto a tape, bring the tape up to the telly, put the tape into the telly and watch it back. And I remember just being completely in awe, but it didn't seem like an actual career to me when I was growing up. I was like, well, it's not like it is now. It was like I thought that you'd have to live in Los Angeles or London maybe to get into video, and you'd have to have connections to get in there and stuff. So I studied economics. I did a master's in business economics. And I'll tell you now, I'm not a very academic person, but I managed to be interested enough to just apply myself to that. It was a 12-month master's after an arts degree. And I enjoyed it, but I was like, oh, I can't see myself working in this. The jobs were kind of consulting, banks, like Deloitte, those kind of companies and stuff. And I was like, no, I just don't see that. So I went traveling and I worked as a waitress and a bar person, and I managed a hostel, and I helped people get kiteboarding gear put on them in Melbourne before they went on their kiteboarding lessons. I did anything I could. And then I arrived in Central America and this job came up for a news spokeswoman for sports something. And I was like, no, nothing about sports. I don't know if I can read out loud, but I'm just going to see if I can go for the interview and get this job. So I went, and it was a real company, an American company based in Costa Rica. And they had an entire studio room, 3 cameras, lights, this machine that was it was about 20,000 euro, I think, at the time, that allowed you to go multi-camera on YouTube. And it was just so cool. And I got to present about sports betting to YouTube for a full year. And that was my entry then. And then I came back, studied it, and I've been working in various shapes and sizes in it then since.
What a great story. So from the master's degree through to, look, I'm going to go traveling. And a few different jobs later, as you do when you're traveling, and you just happen to find this studio in Central America. I mean, what an amazing sort of pivot or junction in your life that took a turn. And I know from your background, obviously, you've done an awful lot in the video work. How many years did you say, Judie, you've been doing video now?
I'd say it's God. I actually don't even know what age I am. Do you know the way you have to really think about what age you are? I'd say it's over 15 years, because I was kind
Yeah,
of in my mid-20s when I found that job. So yeah.
wow. Because I was looking, and broadcast journalist, producer, and editor with broadcasting on Sky, which a lot of people obviously know about. But then I was looking at all the other things that you've done, and that brings us up to, I suppose, what you do today, which is the Vidacademy. So could you tell us a bit about the Vidacademy and how did that come about? Because that's been going for quite a number of years now. And what do you focus on, and how does that work?
So I was producing videos for people, and I kept coming across the same issues. I was spending so much time planning their videos for them, when I was like, they should be planning their own videos. And then at the same time, technology was getting so much better, where I was like, the things that you can make on phones are not as good as DSLRs or professional cameras, but they're not that far away. And once your sound is excellent, as you know, that's what's more important really than video quality. So I just saw this thing of businesses are going to have to start producing videos. And I'd love to show them how to produce them themselves with the teach a man to fish philosophy, as opposed to me doing all of that when, I felt like it wasn't as much value to them. If they could pay me probably the same amount to teach them how to make infinite videos as it would cost to make one video. And then it was growing, and it was starting to get traction, especially with entrepreneurs. It was interesting because entrepreneurs do a lot of programs, and then during the programs they have to deliver a video at the end of it to kind of show investors, and they care so much about their idea. They're working on their messaging all the time anyway, so it's quite easy for them to translate that into a 90-second pitch video with different shots of their products, or kind of, you know, even animations or whatever they want to use. So it started growing from there, and then COVID happened and lockdowns happened, and then all of a sudden there was a big need to teach people how to present to camera and how to get their setup correct and stuff. So that was brilliant. I got to work with teachers, lecturers, everyone, CEOs, anyone, just to kind of try and bring them up a notch in this new world that we live in. Because, you know, in my mind, you used to, you know, dry clean your suit and put on makeup and do your hair before you walk in to meet someone. Now that extends beyond you and what you're wearing to everything that's happening in your screen. So, you know, there's more work to do, but it's worth it. And I find that, like, you know, this setup has taken me a while to get, but it's very basic. I try to make sure everything I do is affordable and teachable. So it's basic, but I think it gets me a lot of work. Just when people see me on camera like this, they're like, oh, she clearly kind of has some idea what she's doing. So we can kind of, like, it's a credibility kind of token. Now, I do work in video, so I need to, but I think when someone works in accounting and they show up to a client meeting kind of like this, I think that then the person is going to just, like, automatically perceive that they are more professional, even if they're not. So I think it works like that.
And so that's fascinating, because obviously at the beginning it was more broadcast journalism and you were producing there too. And I know you've worked in both TV and film for various companies along the way, prior to Vidacademy, where you were television editor, you know, you were producing behind the scenes with films. So why didn't you stay that course with the TV and film? What made you sort of branch into this, I suppose, more corporate, or, you know, you're helping individuals, you're helping businesses, you're helping people pitch to investors. What was that turning point, or was that just a natural sort of step that just kind of happened?
I think it's just my personality is like that. When I was in New Zealand, I got dreadlocks, right? And I just loved how they looked, right? So I got dreadlocks, and I had them for about a year, but I got sick of them. There was too many of them or something like that. So I combed out all the ones underneath. So I had dreadlocks on top and then straightened hair on the bottom. And I was like, this is actually such a reflection of my personality. I'm like half a really, really professional person, and then half a person that just wants to live on a beach, you know, that kind of way. So trying to marry those two things, you know, maybe working on sets in that kind of TV, video, film culture all the time, maybe that was just a little bit too much to one side. And I loved business, and I knew that I was in a good place, especially with the master's degree. Like, you know, that was a good platform for people to take me seriously. I had the vocabulary to talk to businesses. I knew what they were trying to achieve and how to kind of, you know, pitch value to them, as opposed to pitching a creative idea. I had to always think about what's the end result for them. Like, how are they going to measure if this video is successful, and how do I get them from this planning stage to there? So I think it was just like, just following, or I suppose following who you are is important for everyone. And also, I really like to work on my own. Not that I like to work on my own, but I like to drive my own ship. I constantly make up those phrases. I never get them right, but in that sense, I do like to manage my own time. I do like to be choosy about who I work with. Which, you know, that's taken a long time to get there, but I like the option to say no if I get a feeling that me and that person aren't going to gel well together. You know, they could be a lovely person, but you know, the way in some personalities and businesses, you're like, no, I think we're just going to have two opposite approaches, and it's actually just going to not lead to success. So all of those things, I think, make me so happy that I'm doing what I'm doing now the way that I'm doing it. It just really suits me, and I really enjoy it.
Yeah, no, I get that, because, and it's funny with the dreadlock sort of comparison, where it's sort of half and half, where, and it kind of relates back to what you're saying about when you finished your masters, and you're kind of saying, do I really fancy that long-term life in that auditing, consulting type field? Is that where I'm destined to be? And there was something inside maybe going, well, maybe not. And then the traveling kind of made you think about other areas, and the video journey begins, of course. Not that I suppose it had begun earlier from what you were saying with the home camcorder. And when you mention home camcorders, it brings visions of. I remember we had one in our family home, and people would run away from it because they didn't like the way they looked on video. They didn't like the way they sounded, and that was the same even with cassettes. Not video, just audio cassettes. Which is people say that's not my voice, I don't like that. And yet today, not everybody, but a lot more people, whether it's driven by the pandemic or whether it's just the way that we work internationally today, we're all staring into cameras a lot more than we've ever done. So it's a completely new horizon. And to some degree, you kind of have a lot of people have their own sort of mini production studio now, don't they? Or they're trying to understand what they need to do to produce their own video. And I suppose that's where you come in, right, as the expert to help them do that.
Yeah, I love your background, by the way. I love your whole setup. It's really cool.
Well, look, we try, but just on that, just touching on things like backgrounds and tools and fancy microphones and mixers and all the rest of lighting and all that. People can get carried away with the equipment, can't they? And then there's an element of this storytelling. But when you're teaching people how to make good video, what are some of the obvious mistakes that people make, or what do you find yourself having to basically start with people the most? Is it the quality of the audio? Is it the backdrop? Is it the lighting? Is it the quality of the camera? Or are you getting more into the, look, you've got to have a message and you've got to tell a story and you've got to engage with your audience? So what's common when you're sort of taking people on that journey, Judie?
Well, it's interesting. Like in my workshops nowadays, I divide them into 4. So workshop 1 is 2 hours long, and it's delivered through Zoom, and it's all about planning. So I bring them through 8 steps for planning a video, and I can change it depending on, like, if people are making videos for Instagram Reels, I'll kind of be specific to that, and it's a bit of a different kind of thing. But when people are making videos about their businesses to go on their homepage and stuff, that's kind of the one that I use the most, I find. And the first thing I do is start asking people, why are you making this video? Who is it for? Where is the video going? When do you want to upload it? How will you measure success? And what is the key message that you want people to remember? And, like I see some people rolling their eyes a bit at the start. They're like, oh, sure, we know all that, it's all in our heads and stuff. But then when they actually write it down, then I'm like, now you have the foundation of your house, your video house. Everything else will come to that. And when you get confused, because video is very uses a lot of your brain, like, at once, especially when you're trying to be personal with the camera and talk to it, but then you're also trying to be technical. I feel like it's hard, like, it's tiring. So sometimes that first page with those 5 W's and a H is like, oh yeah, that's why we're doing this. Okay, I remember who I'm talking to now. I'm back in the swing of things, and then we just go through, like, aspect ratio, duration, storyboarding, scripting and creating a shot list, release forms, also how to make sure that you're not going to get in trouble for putting people into your video. So once they've all that done, then, well, they go away then for a week and they work on their plan. Then they come back for session 2, and that's in person, and that's where we do all filming. And you're right, it's the sound thing. Like, if that's the most common mistake I used to get. And so they'd send me their first draft, and I'd look at it and I'd be like, oh my God, you look amazing. Your hair is perfect. Your background is great. The lighting is excellent, but your sound just isn't good enough, and you're going to have to re-record again. And they'd be like, no, it's grand. Like, we'll get away with it. It's fine. And I'm like, you won't get away with it. And there's a study actually that was created by a university where they got a speaker, a professor, to stand up and give his research to an audience with really good sound. And then they got the audience to rate a few categories afterwards. Then they got him to redo it with bad sound. And what they found, that was with bad sound, the audience actually liked him less and thought that his research was less important. So you can't it's going to hurt your brand if you're uploading videos with bad sound. So I'm fussy when it comes to the sound. I'll let people alone with, lighting not amazing. Like, I'll try and get them to do it again, but I won't push them too much. But the sound thing I will push, and it's an easy fix, And then we go through loads of different things. And it was interesting what you were saying about people not liking their voice or how they look. And there's very well researched reasons for that, and they're quite obvious. But when you look at yourself, most of the time it's in the mirror, And because our faces aren't symmetrical, we're seeing a flipped version of ourselves. So we're not familiar with how we really look. And then when we speak, the voice comes out of our mouth and goes into our ear. And that's what the camera hears or the microphone. But there's also a tiny muscle that vibrates behind our ear, which makes us sound different in our heads. So what I'm always telling people is like, it's just because you don't not like how you look or sound. You're just not actually familiar with how you really look and sound. You've got a distorted version of how you look and sound and carry that in your own brain. And the only way to get over that is by listening and watching yourself back as much as possible so that you learn to love that person. So then just quickly, then we come back then the third session and we do editing, and I show them how to edit everything in together, scale, make cuts, add in extra shots, add music. And then on the final session, then session 4 is the film festival, where everyone has to come with a produced video and show it to the rest of the participants in the course. And that's my favorite one because I just get to sit back and watch. And sometimes the stuff that they make, Simon, is just incredible. I like have to stop them afterwards and go, come here, like Mark, will you stay on the call afterwards there? And I'm like, Mark, how did you do that thing there? And then I'm taking their information then and adding it to my workshop. So hopefully my workshops are just getting better and better because of the amazing participants that take it.
That's great. And I'm sure the session 4 is a great bit of fun as well. But listen, thanks for taking us through that. And there's some fundamentals in there, isn't there? So, when people think about video, they don't necessarily think about audio quality. And it's funny how, what makes good video is good audio. And your discussion there about the professor speaking with good or bad audio and the perception of somebody receiving that is interesting. I also saw a fascinating study while we're on the subject, Judie, about if the content is family related, immediate family related, and it's an old grainy recording of a family member, it changes your emotional chemistry and your emotional connection to that piece. So you will accept that and tolerate that audio, if that makes sense.
Wow.
Whereas if it's in a different setting where it's not your immediate family or an immediate close loved one, because you don't have that memory of it, maybe from childhood or something, it's a different pickup. And I was kind of laughing to myself when you were saying, when you have to explain to people sometimes, no, that is actually how you sound and look. It's just you're not used to it. And for some people, I suppose that can be really good news or really bad news, depending on how they take it. But thank you for sharing that, because that's important. And it sounds like you're taking people on this real journey of becoming somebody that can produce video and learn the skills in a step-by-step process. My next question, though, Judie, relating to video is, we've seen a tremendous growth in video tools and apps, and people now just pick up a smartphone and just start shooting live to whether it's TikTok or Instagram or YouTube Shorts or Reels or whatever they're doing. Do you think it's different in that sort of always on, instant, just go live straight to camera, from a live streaming perspective, than maybe what you've been describing? Or do you think the principles still hold the same?
I was grappling with this for a little while because I was like, are my courses becoming redundant as more and more people are just, it's handheld, so they're close enough actually to the mic. Like that's probably as far as you can go from the mic to get good enough sound. Obviously it would be better if they were up here and whatever, but like it's all right. Like, and then the camera quality is so good, as you said. People are kind of naturally learning that they need to be standing in near the window for the sunshine, especially people who are making kind of reels and stuff every day. But what I'm finding is that, like, I think that was okay in the beginning. I think that it was quantity of content was more important than quality. But now I'm starting to see that the videos that are rising to the top are edited and they do have a bit more production. Even if it doesn't look like they're produced, they're actually produced. Like somebody is behind the scenes who knows what they're doing. That kind of, so like it's funny, like you're trying to make it look like, oh, I just woke up like this, but really, like, there's like here's my makeup artist and here's the props designer and stuff like that. So yeah, it's I'd be slow to just upload my thoughts as I go on throughout the day. I prefer to kind of sit down and actually go through those 5 W's and say, what message am I trying to get across to my audience today? And then how many views do I want to get out of this? How long is it going to take me to make? Yeah, that's justified. I can spend 3 hours there making a video that will do me for a week or so. That's kind of how I'm approaching it. But I'm thinking all the time, it's changing fast. Sometimes I don't have the answer to those kind of questions. I'm like, maybe I will be redundant in a year or two. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think of a filmmaker or a big YouTube star like somebody like Casey Neistat, for example, who produced films with his brother initially and then decided to make a YouTube video every day for over a year, or probably more. But when you drill down into it, it sounds very, like you say, very much, oh, we'll just shoot a video every day. But he had to really think about, well, what's today's story about? And then he's got to
Mhm.
sit there at night and edit it. And then he's got to make sure it gets uploaded and it's, it's rendered and it gets pushed out and it goes out to everybody. And then tomorrow he's got to do the same again. So you often hear of people, even in that YouTube environment, particularly people that are at the top of their game, they can very often burn out because the amount of energy that it takes to think creatively, produce good content, edit it all and get it out there, it's quite a heavy lift for most people. And I think people start with good intentions and then realize that actually there's a process behind it. And I love what you said about people that make it look effortless, but behind them there's a plan and there's a system and a workflow, because more and more people that are rising to the top, to your point, are really thinking about the content. They're really thinking about the production values, and I think that's often missed by people. It's like social media is free, for example. Well, it
Yeah.
is, but you've got to put the work in if you want it to work. You can't just build an audience out of thin air. Um,
God,
so
it's actually the most expensive, isn't it? Like if you think
yeah,
about it, like if someone were to
yeah.
pay you for the amount of hours you spent online, it would be more than your salary probably. Like so, you're so right. It's fake free. It's not free. It's consuming all of your time, whether you're creating or consuming the content. You're on there, kind of like I've actually taken off the social medias from my phone. Now I do have three phones. I've got an iPhone 12, 13, and 14. But with my 14, it's got none of the apps on it. So I actually did have I had to download Instagram for something there, but I take them off straight away because I was just spending way too much time on it. But then my office phone, I can then go onto the apps, and because it's actually not a good experience to use the apps on desktop. You kind of have to have, but then I'm like, no, it's between 9 and 5 that the apps are allowed. And then when I leave the office, not that I work from 9 until 5, I
Judy,
totally
listen,
don't.
I will believe you that just because it's not on one of your three phones that you're not on it constant. I'll believe you, okay?
But I
Um,
am. I'm still
But
on
you
it
but
too
you're
much,
right.
Simon.
Some of the applications, particularly, are natively mobile, and it
Yeah,
works much better in a mobile interface. You're completely
yeah.
correct. And for anybody who's working that in a production type environment, it's essential that you have that mobile application, because working it in a desktop environment there are workarounds to some of them, not all of them, but it's not easy. And it works much more easily in a native mobile environment. So I hear you, and that's from somebody who probably carries more than one smartphone too. Um, but the other thing I wanted to ask you, obviously, is about your own learning style, because obviously you're passionate about video. You teach people how to produce good quality video. But when you take on board information yourself, or where you get inspiration from yourself, Judy, are you an avid book reader? Do you listen to podcasts? Are you an audio book person? Do you just scour the web for information, or do you just prefer talking to people? Like, how does that work for you? Is there any particular genre, author, style? Do you read for business or pleasure? Or are you just tuned into Netflix, and that's how you take on, you're a visual type learner. How does it work for you, and what kind of things do you like to onboard?
I actually don't know really. Like, there's a few. I've unsubscribed from everything in my email except for one thing that kind of gives me a good download of news. I don't watch any actual news on the television or anything like that because, like, I think things can affect me and stuff, and I'm just like, "Do you know what? Now just be in your own bubble." I will get really excited about a new piece of gear, like when the iPhone 14 comes out. I'll want to get it and I'll want to go out and test it in different environments and in low light and in bad weather conditions. And, like I'll always be trying to find ways to like plug the iPhone into a gimbal and then put the gimbal on a stick and then try and get like mad shots from like, like that's where I really thrive and love like testing stuff out and mixing. Like I've just got so much equipment that I've just gathered over the years, and I just love like finding when a new cable will go into something else, and then I can use it as a speaker instead of as a sound recording thing. Like that kind of stuff just blows my mind. And then I'll go on the internet and I'll be 13 tabs deep and trying to figure out like how would you do that now and stuff. But I'll need to have a motive to really get into it. So I think, I don't know if that answers the question, but I think it's kind of like I just want to I want to learn something, and then nothing will stop me until I figure that thing out. Like
I hear you, yeah. So there's that, the new things out, the passion, the figuring it all out, seeing what you can do, pushing it to its limits. Yeah, I get that. That's great. That's great to hear. And I suppose the other question I've got for you is, throughout your career and your journey, Judie, you must have had people who've inspired you along the way, people that have motivated you, people that you look up to, or maybe a particular character trait. But when I ask you that question, does anybody immediately spring to mind? Or is it a particular, personality or character trait that you admire?
like it's gonna sound cheesy, Simon, but definitely my mum. Do you know, I've grown up with this woman who is a powerhouse in terms of like, like a businesswoman, and but a very caring businesswoman at the same time. And like is very good at sales, very good at sales. Sales would not be my strong point at all. Like I'd rather not. Like if people want to come to me, I'm delighted. I don't do a hard sell, that kind of way. And I'm like, oh, and I can talk to them and I'll be like, here's the price, here's what I do, let me know. Whereas my mum would be like seeking things out, and she just has a brain for business and numbers. I could say to her, how much did you spend on that coffee machine 75 years ago? And she's like, €32.15. And I'm like, how do you remember that stuff? Like it's just in her brain. And outside of that, like this is my sound a bit weird, but like I'd be slow to say any stranger like has inspired or motivated me, because I don't know, in our lifetime we've almost seen like all of these people who were incredible and larger than life. Something's come out about them that actually makes them like jeepers, I never would have thought that about a person. So I'd fear putting people on a pedestal unless I know them inside out. Now I might take like small bits of advice from them and stuff, but I'd still be like, not until I live with you will I say that I actually know you inside out. So that's my
Well,
approach.
look, mom is always a good answer,
Yeah.
and I think that's a great person to be inspired by. So thank you for sharing that, Judy.
And can I ask you who yours would be if you
Well, I'm a little like you. I take great inspiration from my immediate family, and also from people in my wider family who I know have done tremendous things and achieved things. But on the grand scale of, does anybody know them internationally? No. But some people have done some miraculous things that I'm particularly proud of. And I suppose from a business perspective, and I will mention a couple of names, but I would look at people like Tim Cook, for example. He's not the Steve Jobs genius, but he is a great business operator, and he's running one of the most successful companies ever to exist. I'm not saying I necessarily agree with everything that they do. I'm not saying that they get everything right. But I do, like you were saying, I do take little bits from many different people over time. I do like that kind of inspiration. But like you too, sometimes your heroes turn out to not be heroes. So we do probably edge on the side of caution a little bit more these days. Yeah, I think that's
I
a
think
good
so,
thing. Yeah.
yeah.
The other thing I wanted to ask you about is, as you look forward over the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months, what are you hoping to achieve with your business? What are you hoping to do? Is it more of the same? Have you got other ideas? Or what are you hoping to sort of accomplish as you go forward this year?
Well, with the Vidacademy, it's very much like, it's customer led. Like if someone comes to me and they're like, we need to learn how to make better reels, then I'll spend a good few days putting the content together. And they're like, we only have 2 hours, we've that many people. And I'm like, brilliant. Okay. So that's kind of like how I come up with new ideas for what to deliver to people. But I have a new business that we launched at the end of last year, and it's called The Story Of. And what this is it's about capturing memories of our older loved ones, putting it onto a web page, And then that web page is connected to a physically printed QR code that would go onto that person's grave or bench or urn after they pass away. So, I think it all just goes back to those tapes when I was a kid. Like everything just goes full circle. Like, and my mum, I was there over the years and I was like, God, I just can't believe that my mum is not going to be here one day. And her grandkids and her great grandkids aren't going to know her, yet I'm walking around with this guy that will be able to like capture her. Like, why is this is just terrible, like this, something should be done. So I was harping on about this for about 10 years until I met my two co-founders. And my idea now was Elder Tube. It was YouTube for older people. Danny's idea was the graves QR code on gravestones, and then Luke, our other founder, then is like the glue that keeps us all together. So we've been working on it for a year, and then we got a television segment done about it. And once it went on television, then I must have done, I'd say, 30 radio interviews, one live TV thing about it. It just exploded. So now we're just kind of in the next phase of it. Like that was all a great high, but now we're trying to make it like we can do it. We're doing it all manually at the moment, so we're trying to figure out ways to automate the processes and stuff. So, but like this is all from the side of my desk and on weekends. The Vidacademy is kind of like how I pay for my broccoli and cheese, and then the rest of the week that I'm like, okay, how do I get this going? Because I am really excited about this idea. I don't think it's as important now as it would be in 50 years time. I think in 50 years time, when great grandchildren can watch their great grandparents speak and talk and tell them some advice and stuff like that, like I just think it gives me shivers down my spine still. I'm like really excited about it. So hopefully, fingers crossed.
Yeah, no, and that's a great thing, because I did see that TV piece that you did, and it's on one sense it's incredible. On the other sense, it sort of really gets to the human inside of us when you start talking about past loved ones, and being able to continue that message. And I think the world of video plays a part in that, because so many times, particularly if you go back at just one generation, you don't have to go back far, there's very little documented because the tools weren't there, the internet wasn't there, and I think with the tools and the cost of storage and the ability to film and to share a little bit about who a person was when they were with us, I think that's an incredible thing. So I'm sure we'll link that up somewhere in this episode so people can see that in a little bit more detail. But that's just at the moment, that's something that you're also doing, which is incredible. The other thing I wanted to ask you, Judie, before we do run out of time today, is that whether there's anything that I haven't touched on or anything else that you'd like to bring our attention to, but also if people want to find out more about the work that you do at the Vidacademy, or if they need some help with their video production and putting it together, where are you sending people to these days? Where's the best place for people to find you and reach out and connect with you?
I suppose the vidacademy.com. I was lucky to get the .com early, but I have to deal with that part in Facebook where your one is like, or your man from Napster or wherever is like, drop the Facebook and just make it Facebook. One day I'd like to be vidacademy.com, but right now I'm the vidacademy.com. So yeah, please do go there. And I suppose just one thing for me, I suppose that's helped me over the last year, because I am quite an anxious person. I worry a lot about like the future and am I doing the right thing? Should I be learning this? Should I be learning that? And like I spend way too long at the desk and stuff. And like this year I was like, I really want to kind of just do enough and not like burn myself out, because I do get into burnout cycles. But on TikTok, where everyone gets their best advice now these days, there was a lovely video, and it was a voiceover from a girl, and it was copied loads of times, and she said, I don't chase, I attract. What belongs to me simply finds me. And ever since, I've printed it out and I put it on my wall, and it just it keeps me just, I don't have to chase after everything. If I'm being me and doing the best I can, what's supposed to come for me will come for me. It's not my responsibility to be worried about every single thing. Chill out, enjoy the process, and it will all work out for the best. Hopefully it's working so far. I'll come back to me in a year now and I'll be like, well, that was a disaster. I should have remained anxious and on top of things.
I don't think so, Judie. And you know what? That's such a nice note for us to end on today. So listen, that brings us to the end of the global discussion with Judie Russell. Thank you, Judie, for spending time with me today. Thank you to all our audience around the world for watching and listening to this episode of the podcast. Make sure you like, follow, subscribe, do all the things we need you to do to help support the podcast. And I hope you join me back here for more discussions with creatives, leaders, and thinkers. So thank you, Judie. It's been a real pleasure to catch up with you today.
Same to you, Simon. Thank you.